Hello everybody, my name is Patrick and I own MacDonald Timing. Welcome to the channel. This is our second video for MeetPro2 regarding setting up a track and field event. In this video we're going to go over some of the more advanced features of the program for track, and we'll show you some of the tips and tricks and best practices that we've learned over the many years that we've been dealing with the program. If you missed the first video, there's a link down in the description. And keep in mind, this is only for track and field. We're going to come out with another video for cross country later in the year. So let's get into it. So I haven't changed anything from the last video, but wanted to go over a few other things that maybe best practices and tips and tricks to get the most out of it. I would say this is more the advanced features set of the program. One thing is that we'd come in and maybe want to look at meet information. We can put conditions, we can put the host, meet director, and who did the timing. So that would actually show up on most of the reports, and the referee. We would do this very religiously for college events, but for high school events, not strictly speaking quite as necessary. And then division setup, we don't do that for this one. Lane setup, you can change around the lanes or the alleys. Competitor number setup, we showed that in the previous video. Scoring setup is, we have some options here. Maybe we're only going to score 2 people per team. I do use this when we have an event that's hosted by a host school that says, all right, you're limited to 2 entries per team, but they as the host are going to enter multiple, so we would set that to 2. When it's set to 0, it means that everybody can score. Anybody who's in the event can score. So setting it to 2 or 3 or whatever it may be is pretty reasonable. Lane setup, again, it's just a big long list, and so it's going to say, all right, what's the primary lanes that you're going to want to assign. When there's 8 lanes, lane 4 is typically the preferred lane, and then it goes 5, 3, 6, and so you can change around this. It's helpful if you're doing an indoor meet, maybe with a 6-lane track, where you would actually want to set it up so that 5 is the preferred lane, or 4, 5. But for this, not necessary. Interfaces. I don't use field links, and the web app server is actually going to be changed around or going away. But when it comes to uploading results, we do use FTP upload and we do use publish to disk. So FTP upload, it's going to show up here. We set it up and have all the settings that I would like to personally use. We typically don't post the performance list or the entries. We do for some meets, but we do a lot of the seating of our high school events literally at the location of the event. So we'll have a meet that starts at 3:30. We will set the entries to close at 3. Download the entries right away. We'll seed the field events, and then we'll wait for the coaches meeting to do some scratches on the running events, and then we'll seed things on almost on the fly. But this is all you need to do in order to set it up, and you have your username, password, have the host directory, which I've blurred out for obvious reasons, and then you select the settings down here and be good to go. FTP does work pretty well, and you can use the live update feature with it as well. I think there's a bit of an issue right now with marking an event complete, but on scoring, it's very easy for the system to go ahead and do it on scoring. It seems to work really, really well on scoring. You can only select one, so S3 is Amazon's web service hosting, which is I've used in the past. I've gotten away from it recently. Upload to the web, you can actually use the MeetPro servers to host your results if you want to. I use FTP because I have my own website, and actually I use publish to disk quite a bit. Publish to disk is basically the same thing as FTP, only it's just going to save it to a local directory. So if I'm out in kind of the wilds, I will go ahead and publish to disk, and then I will push using Dreamweaver. So I'll push the folder using Dreamweaver, or more specifically, I'll actually just push up the index and then the results file that's specific to that event to the web. That way I'm using a very small amount of bandwidth for it. It's just a few kilobytes basically, and it's definitely a difference maker in some of the places that I time, which I don't have a great signal. Some of them are pretty far out there, so I prefer the local publish, especially for a high school event, which may be kind of out in the middle of nowhere. If I've got a really good internet connection, if I'm in a city and I've got 4G on my hotspot, or I'm using an institution's Wi-Fi, I'll go ahead and use FTP and just set up the live update, and it's a lot easier. So that covers that. Again, live update, we do use that. Come over to scoreboards is interesting. Dectronics, there's a Dectronics for fixed digit. I don't use a lot of fixed digit displays, so I don't really mess with it, but Result TV has an output here, and I'm having it output to my own Result TV laptop, which is the IP address up here. I've typically used UDP with this and been pretty successful, and you can change around some of the aspects of it. This module was actually updated this fall for cross country, and I haven't tested it since then, but I believe that it's doing a better job of everything at this point in time. Most of the stuff that I send from Results TV just happens to be from finished links. I just, I boot it up and then I let it run. I have played with this module, and I have sent over field event scores. In particular, I've sent over the results from heptathlons and decathlons to the boards before, but this has not been my kind of primary use for it, basically. In the reports, you have plenty of options over here. You can produce obviously the start list, which we showed in the last video, and the results. You can bulk in the results at the end as well. Pretty standard things. A lot of these reports I actually don't use, or very not that common. Don't use statistics all that often. Don't use the events all that often, or sessions. Team scores are usually included in the results, so I don't have to run that all that frequently. Individual scores do exist for the whole lot. I do use MVP a lot. A lot of meets want the high point performer, and this is set up very reasonably. You can also include the relay points, and that's important. You can set, I think there's a maximum of like 10 or 20 that you can actually show, but you can pull up that and you can see who's done what. And obviously it splits the relay points. You want to make sure that athletes that are in contention are going to be set up properly with the relays. So normally I run this a little bit before, like after the 200 or so, before the 3200 break, and make sure that we have that the top kids are set up properly if they ran on relays. Do run that frequently. Medal count, almost never run it, or team statistics. The score sheets are necessary. We do the field event sheets. The finish line sheets are nice if you want one heat per sheet, but you can also come into the start lists, and a lot of the teams now want just page break between events, and that way you're not wasting quite as much paper. I do normally set up with a gender specific nature, so you bring up one by one, and this is really good for clerking. That's the main thing for that. Records. So the records were updated and changed around somewhat recently. It's very easy to add a record set, and then you'll have the ability to say this is what it is. And so I'll set up facility records pretty easily, and then they're available for kind of whatever you want them to be, and then usually I'll move them over from year to year, and they update on the fly usually during a meet. So we had a few that were set this past weekend, and they were for an indoor meet that I did, and they were reflected on the results actually. Labels, again, they are nice if you want entry labels for whatever reason. Normally you would only do these for results, but for awards. But they're very helpful for a lot of high schools want them because they're doing ribbons and they do them up in the press box, and so print them off here, and then it's standard kind of Avery labels, basically whatever 5160, and there's a couple of I thought there were a couple of other options, but your standard labels in there. And Direct Athletics, as I said, and TFERs are basically the same thing. You log in, you can import the entries, and then at the end of the day you upload results. And there's multi-user mode, which is available. It's a server which allows 2 people to edit an event, a MeetPro event, at the same time. And there's a whole separate guide for it, and there's disconnection and everything. I do have it. I actually don't use it all that often, but it is nice to have. But it is available. So a couple of best practices that I use. Sometimes the program, just like any other program, might kind of go a little bit sideways, and so rebooting the program is a really great way to kind of get back into things. It's not been something that I've been doing so much recently, but in the past there have been times where the program just kind of bogs down, and it's good to just go ahead and do a full reset. When it comes to when you reboot the program, some of these things are not going to be set the same. And so if you were to come into FTP upload, and I prefer to set it up with a session order, but if I were to come back in after rebooting the program and just press publish, it will do so with more of a default setting. And so it'll do a publication thing where it separates the genders, and so it's not preferred. So anytime you come in, you reboot the program, it's best to go ahead and just redo the setup, and you probably have to set up live update again as well. But the start list is not affected by this. So if you're thinking, well, I got to do everything, start lists are going to be whatever the last parse of start lists were. The last time you push start lists over to the links, to wherever your finish links is running, should still be completely valid and the same. Some people with finish links, especially during cross country, use a setting where you are saving the lift file frequently, like maybe every 2, 5, 10 seconds or so. That particular hidden setting in links will mess around with MeetPro's ability to do auto import. So it is very possible to set up MeetPro to basically do every functionality that you need it to do on its own for running events. So if you're not entering any field event results, you can set it up. You come in, and seed everything up and update the start lists, and then you come over and set up your FTP upload, and then you set up live update, and you set up live update based on scoring or whatever, and then you just let MeetPro do its thing in the background, and you can go focus on running finish links. It will continuously upload when results are found to be valid in the system, and it'll just run. It's maybe not the best idea, but it is there and it's available. Now, in the original video, I got this file from MileSplit.com, and so it's a semicolon delimited file. When I'm going to come back in at the end of the meet and I need to upload to MileSplit, it does get a little bit tricky. I'm going to select text, and I'm going to deselect a whole bunch of these things, which are not going to come out during a text anyway, in a text file. You don't need English because it's already in English. I'm going to take yours and we'll correct. All right, so here we go. So the problem is that MileSplit is still only recognizing results from high-tech, and high-tech has a very specific way of denoting results. And frankly, I technically don't believe it's correct, but it is what it is. And in order to get it back up to MileSplit, we need to go through and change around a few things. So I use replace, and I will come over and I will go apostrophe, and then I'm just going to replace it with a dash, and you're going to see these the field events be changed around, and I did the apostrophe in the space, so it should be just those two. Good. And then I'm going to come back through and I'm going to replace the double with the space and replace all. And so now you can see we went from, you know, proper notation to a notation that's more akin to high tech. Need to come back in and we need to change around just a little bit, add a space into it so the columns match up just a little bit better, and we should be good with this. So this is now something that you could post on MileSplit and have your MileSplit coordinator actually be able to input this to the kids' profiles. It's a long story. I don't 4-0 is not a technical way to describe somebody doing something that's 4 feet even, but this is the way that high tech set it up, and so this is the way that MileSplit is currently working. There are other ways to output results using a more proper way, so we can export athletes, results, advancers. So you can export results using a CSV or a semicolon file or even an LFF file. And I really wish that MileSplit would look into this, because there are other ways that you can export results that are literally more proper than 4-0 or whatever it may be. But that's a good point. Let's come over here and we can export advancers. And so we have these, we can select more. One thing to be mindful about is if you have a tie in the high jump, you might only get one advancer. So say we have a 3-way tie for second place in the high jump, which we don't right now, obviously, but it's only going to output the top 2 as it sees it. I don't know if there's a way around this in some sort of way, but right now you have to do this, and then you can come in and you can say ignore, and then you could get the as an example, we will use this because there's a third place. Skip. I don't know. So there's a way that you can come back through and create another small file and then just add them in together, because it's just going to create another semicolon delimited file. It's really not like a super complex mechanism, and so it would be entered into another event just using the import feature. So if you were using MeetPro at a district event or something, and those kids are going on to sectionals or state or whatever, that's fine. They can import the semicolon delimited file, no problem at all. And then this will export a semicolon delimited file, no problem at all. And again, you can create your own template, but you don't have to. It's just a way to kind of simplify it. You can use just any old database as a template, which is pretty handy. So I don't bother with it. Rebuilding the database, if something really does go quite wrong with it, and I've seen it before, you rebuild the database and it'll attempt to kind of fix some of the errors that it has with itself. In high tech, you might just get a kind of a base error that you really can't describe what's going on. But for the most part, this is kind of where I hang out. Settings, the report setup is definitely something to spend some time with. When it comes to the web settings, you can do the continuous upload. That will create a little bit of another column on the left-hand side that will show like what was the most recent thing that's been done. I personally don't prefer it. I prefer the look of it without it, and I just prefer to batch it all together. So whenever the 200s are done, I'll upload all the 200s for one gender and then go back and forth. And then a few of these things are not bad ideas. I don't typically use them all that often. Don't have to. And then there's list settings as well. So when so I'm in the results tab over here. If I were to list this, these are the settings for listing specifically. You can change that around, and that's quite helpful. Everything here, I would say, was designed with kind of ease of use in mind. It's a much, much simpler program to deal with than others out there. I'm not just going to label one, because I've used a few, and this is actually the easiest that I've had to deal with by far. If you do field series, you won't have the JD places, but you can JD pretty easily. The J place is over here for it, and it's a little bit more logical than some of the other programs as well. But it'll auto break the ties typically when you do a field series, so just be mindful about that. But you get to the end of the day and you're good, and you score the last event. I should mention, if for some reason you had scoring set up wrong initially, you can come in here and you can rescore the entirety of the event. It's going to take a moment for us because we only got a few events scored, but feel like we're pretty good here. If you have specific high-end questions, please leave them down below, and happy to help and go from there. I will put one plugin. There's a great community.tfmeetpro.com, which is a great resource for specific problems with MeetPro. So I hope that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down below, or go to the community MeetPro page that's set up. You can find a link in the description. If the video helped you out, please leave a like, and keep in mind that we have plenty more track and field and cross-country related timing content on the channel. Please consider subscribing. Thank you.